I recently did a review of City of Heroes. Some people didn't like the review because I didn't cover any of the Going Rogue expansion stuff that just came out. Well, OriginalGamer.com recently got a review copy of Going Rogue, and I was asked to do the review. So here it is. RPG Fanatic reviews Going Rogue expansion for City of Heroes. The first thing I should mention is that the concept of this expansion is that, from now on, all archetypes can be heroes or villains through a morality system. This means masterminds can become heroes, and defenders can become villains. The old villain and hero tutorials are no longer accessible to new player accounts. Instead, all new players will begin in Petoria, an alternate dimension where almost all the storyline heroes of the game are villains. It's kind of like DC Multiverse's Earth 3, where you have evil versions of Superman and so forth. Petoria is a zone for characters 1 to 20. Upon reaching level 20, your character will become a hero or villain. The Petoria zones are, in my opinion, better designed than the earlier starting zones. The zones are smaller, so there is less travel time from contacts to missions. Also, contacts don't appear to ask you to zone hop, and will only give missions to locations within the same zone they occupy. The Petoria mission maps are completely new and have a bit of variety to them. You won't have to do hundreds of warehouse and office missions like the older content. Instead, you'll have sewers, warehouses, and labs. The mission maps do seem better designed. There are less dead ends, so they aren't a confusing maze like so many older mission maps were designed to be.
Are you going to describe everything in minute detail? Why don't you just give them the summary?
Okay, fine. Here's a summary of all the new stuff in Going Rogue. There are new power sets. There is a demon summoning power set for masterminds, dual pistols for defenders, blasters, and corruptors, and kinetic melee for brutes, scrappers, stalkers, and tankers. Electric control is also available for controllers and dominators. With the exception of shield mastery, all existing power sets had their powers buffed in some way. Most notably, those who played fiery aura characters will be happy to learn that burn no longer causes fear, and while the damage was reduced, it basically works the way it originally did when City of Heroes was first released. Flight and sprint speeds have also significantly increased. The game has something called Ultra Mode, which is supposedly a mode where the game graphics are greatly enhanced. I can't tell you what this is like because entering Ultra Mode causes my client to crash, which is ultra crappy. Before Going Rogue came out, the auction house markets for heroes and villains were separate. Now they are all together. For many servers, this means prices for items are now greatly inflated because you have both long-term heroes and villains bidding on items. Take this as you will. I mentioned this before, City of Heroes now has an alignment system. New players start as a neutral character in the new zone of Petoria. When performing missions, you will often be given choices on what you want to do, and these dialogue trees determine whether your hero becomes a villain or a hero. Or so you would think. In reality, the moral choices you make in Petoria do not mean jack. Once you reach level 20, your character is given the choice to be a hero or villain, regardless of what moral choices you made during the quest chains. You could behave as the most evil bastard in the world, and in the end you still get to be a hero. Personally, my mastermind robbed a bank, placed bombs around a city, fed programmers to zombies, kidnapped someone's family members to use as hostages, and then murdered them with bombs, and I was still able to make him a hero. What kind of morality system allows something like that? Let me ask you this. If the game designer doesn't view the moral choices as important, why should I, the player, view them as important? Because the story is different? That's flavor text. A good story makes me care about the story, and that means having an emotional attachment. I can't have an emotional attachment to choices if those choices have no consequences. The real morality system begins after level 20. Basically, after defeating random enemies, you'll get a tip about something going on in the world. Following up on the tip allows you to do a tip mission. After doing 10 tip missions, you can do a morality mission, and after doing the morality mission, you have the option to switch sides or become more loyal to your current faction. The only real endgame raid of the game, Cathedral of Pain, has been released. Note that Cathedral of Pain was in the game way back in 2006, but was removed quickly because of game-breaking bugs. Now, 4 years later, it has finally been revamped so it takes 3 parties to clear. However, the rewards are reward merits, the same reward for every task force in the game, used to buy stuff from NPC vendors, and a random temporary character buff that lasts a week. That's it. How awesome, huh? I mean, okay, the temporary buff is really powerful, sure, but that isn't enough to make me want to run it. They could have, at the least, made some random costume recipes drop that can only be obtained in this raid. Instead you get badges, a buff, and a reward you can get from every task force in the game. Bearing all of the new content in mind with the old content, I have to ask myself, what does City of Heroes do that no other massively multiplayer online RPG does? Is it, as many players suggest, good storylines? Well, no, all games have storylines and quest flavored text, and I personally don't think the stories in City of Heroes are any better or worse than those in other games. What was unique about other games I played for many years? Ragnarok Online had guild vs guild castle capturing and defending in its PvP event War of the Imperium, which I really enjoyed. WoW had epically challenging raid design and team PvP events, which I really enjoyed and was worth all the boring grinding. And Nexus TK at least had player-ran organizations who can get GM assistance to create role-playing events, which I enjoyed taking part in. Some fans of the game suggest City of Heroes is a great game for online role-playing, but I strongly disagree. City of Heroes has no game mechanics to encourage player role-playing. If you look at well-designed tabletop role-playing games, many of the character abilities are designed to promote and encourage the player to not only interact with the NPCs, but also the game world. City of Heroes has no such mechanics. It doesn't even have something as simple as skills designed to promote role-playing. I mean, hero and villain players can't even directly oppose one another in a meaningful way. What does City of Heroes have that makes it a special snowflake? Near as I can tell, other than you can dress like a superhero or a supervillain, City of Heroes doesn't have any gimmick. It's a generic fantasy massively multiplayer online RPG with flavored text and graphics, making it look like a modern comic book world, but there's nothing really unique about the design that separates it from every other fantasy massively multiplayer online RPG out there. It offers nothing that encourages me to play it any more than I have to, which is a real shame. Here we have a game concept where you could have supergroups engaging in some kind of guild PvP event, yet the developers don't create a system that encourages something like that. And when I say PvP, I'm not necessarily meaning everything has to be about beating the crap out of each other. The two sides merely need to have opposing goals in the event. If any game concept justifies guild vs guild PvP, it's a superhero comic book massively multiplayer online RPG. I mean, let's think about how many comics involve superhero and supervillain groups clashing. The X-Men vs the Brotherhood of Mutants, Justice League vs the Legion of Supervillains, the Avengers vs Hydra, the Fantastic Four vs the Frightful Four. Hell, Spider-Man had to fight the Sinister Six all by himself. The battles between super organizations were some of the best issues of these comic books, so there's plenty of source material for game designers to find new PvP game mechanics and incorporate them in a way that doesn't just capture the flag, and actually means something within the context of the game world. Superhero groups could have consequences for failing to thwart the plot of a supervillain group, and vice versa. Maybe the supervillains have to break out of Arkham Asylum if the superhero group defeats and captures them. Maybe there could be time missions, where the two supergroups have missions that are opposed to one another. Bank robbery missions where the villains try to rob the bank and the heroes try to stop them. Hostage escort missions where the heroes need to rescue hostages and escort them to safety while the villains try to kill the hostages. Supposedly, new Endgame content will be released sometime next year, and I can't say what it is because there is little information released other than it'll be a way to further customize level 50 characters. But this content hasn't been released, and like all unreleased content, it's subject to change. In my honest opinion, the Going Rogue expansion isn't an expansion at all. It's basically a new leveling zone for levels 1 through 20 that costs $40. I feel the expansion was rushed and is currently not worth the $40 it costs to upgrade existing accounts. Maybe that will change when the developers release the in-game content for the expansion, but I wouldn't hold my breath for something that we have no details about.